Hello everybody. Nice to see you again. Thank you for all the kind comments that I've had lately and emails, messages. I've enjoyed communicating with a lot of you and appreciate your support and kind comments. I know most of you you watch my videos, you like the funny stories, and sometimes there's a laugh at the end. This is not one of those videos. If you're looking for something funny, this one you might want to skip. Kind of a tragedy. Give you a little bit of backstory. My parents met when they were like 17 and 18, got married at 18, 19, because my mother got pregnant, and they had to basically elope. My father had a football scholarship at Indiana State University. He had to give that up and worked in a gas station, a shoe store, and various other jobs to support me and my mother. They were married for over 45 years and got divorced. One of those midlife crisis things. There was really no reason for it. Just one of those things that happened. And my mother moved into an apartment. My father, at the time they sold the house, he moved into his own place too. And then he moved down to Florida. He was living down Boca Raton. I was working on a cruise ship at the time for Park West. I was on the Voyager of the Seas, which was kind of my ship. I used to always take out the big Royal Caribbean ships or big Carnival ships, whatever the biggest, newest ship was, that's where they put me. And so I was out on a ship, and my little brother's son had a birthday party, 3 years old, and Eric insisted on my dad coming up from Boca Raton for his birthday party. And so Dad didn't really want to come back to Louisville. That's where they were. That's where my brother was living at the time. My mother was living there. And my father lived there for a long time. And he just had a lot of bad memories about it. He liked Florida. He didn't really want to come to Louisville at all for any reason. But my brother, Jamie, pressured him and finally agreed to come. And they had worked together, by the way, in the mortgage business. So my father and his new wife, Marlene, flew up to Louisville for the birthday party. And when the party's over, I guess Dad got bored, and he borrowed my brother's 10-speed bike and wanted to go for a ride. It was like early October, so the weather wasn't too bad. It was kind of drizzly that day. And a little more backstory, my father had ridden his bicycle from Florida all the way to Kansas City, which is over 2,000 miles, about, 10 years before that. So he was liked the bike. He was always biking from his house in Boca to the beach and back, and he biked a lot. So it wasn't unusual for him to take a bike ride. So he's at my brother's house. Birthday party for my nephew Preston is over. Dad gets on the bike, takes off on a ride. And he didn't tell anybody really what he was doing. They just saw him take the bike out. And he goes down out of the neighborhood, which is in Prospect, Kentucky, onto a road called River Road, which kind of meanders along the Ohio River. It goes all the way from River Road, or from Prospect, all the way to downtown Louisville, which is like maybe 15 miles. He's halfway down there, and nobody knows the whole story, but basically what we kind of pieced together from the police reports is that somebody got too close. There's really no bike lane there. Somebody got too close to him and tapped him with their car, with their mirror, whatever, knocked him off the bike. He didn't have a helmet on. He fell over, put a little dent in his head. I mean, a little bump on his head, a little bit of little blood, no stitches required, nothing like that. And the police found him sitting on the side of the road, you know, kind of dazed and confused. And so they called an ambulance and they took him down to the hospital downtown Louisville. I can't remember what the hospital's called, but the thing about that's important to remember is it's a teaching hospital where, you know, doctors go to get their internship and medical students go. And this whole time I'm on a cruise ship. So I get an email from my brother saying that, you know, Dad's had a bike accident, don't worry, just got a bump on his head. Doctor said he kind of rang his bell, just wanted to let you know. Okay. So the next time I was in a city, a turnaround port, which was like New Orleans, I called home to check, make sure everything's okay. Yeah, he's fine in the hospital. He's acting kind of strange, but you know, he's all right. He's in intensive care. So I signed off the ship, which I was supposed to. I didn't sign up early. My contract was over, and I was signing off the ship to, and I had to go to a conference in Detroit for the Park West Gallery. And I was there for like 1 or 2 days, and all of a sudden Eric said, well, they've had to put him on a ventilator. I go, what? You know, that's serious. So I canceled everything, got on a plane, came home. They take me to the hospital, and apparently they'd had him in the hospital, and he kept trying to take out his IV, and they put a feeding tube in his nose for some reason. And he kept trying to pull those out. So they strapped his arms down. And so they had him like pinned to the bed 24/7 like that. And of course he's wanting to get loose. He's still not himself. And apparently it said some things that I never heard my father say since I know him. He said some racist things. About President Obama. I think the election was going on then or around that time. Some really nasty things which I will not repeat. My father was Republican, but he was not racist in any way, shape, or form. My roommate in college was black, and my dad invited him over for dinner, you know, every Sunday. So my father was not racist. So where this came from, why he was saying these things, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's had something to do with a concussion or whatever happened to him. So anyway, they have him in intensive care, and it's just days go by, no change. He's with my stepmother, Marlene, who's a wonderful person. She stayed there with him the whole time in the room, sleep in the room with him. And he's just the same. He's not getting better. He's not getting worse. And then all of a sudden he gets sepsis. So he'd gotten an infection in the hospital. I found out later that when they decided to put him on, intubate him, put him on the respirator, it took like 4 people to hold him down while they gave him drugs to paralyze him, and then put the feeding tube in him, or the respirator down his throat into his lungs. And so he wasn't, he said he was having trouble breathing, that's what they said. When I think about it, if you've got, you know, both hands tied down, you've got a tube in this nostril, and the other nostril, you know, maybe you've got a stuffy nose or something, so you'd be breathing through your mouth, right? Heavy, wouldn't you? That's what I thought. You'd be breathing through your mouth, so it looked like you're struggling to breathe. That's because your nose is clogged up. So anyway, he's, you know, laying there, and he had 1 or 2 events in the night where the alarms all went off. They said his kidneys was shutting down or something. They did different things to him to stabilize him. I kept asking him, so why don't you just take him off the respirator and let him, you know, recover on his own? Oh, we can't do that right now. He was on that respirator for almost a month. Life support, I guess, what you call it, for almost a month. And I guess the infection kept getting worse. And his insurance ran out. He could only stay on, it only covers so much, the insurance he had. I don't know what insurance it was, but it only covered so much money. And they called us in one day when we were in the hospital and said, well, your father's a very sick man. Okay, he wasn't sick when he got there. Walked in on his own 2 feet. Had a little bump on his head, that's it. He was talking, walking, everything. But now he's very sick. And he said, we just don't think he's going to make it, and I think it's time to discontinue the life support, and it's up to the family to make the decision. And of course my mother's there, and my stepmother's there, and they're all crying. My sister's there, she's crying. Two of my brothers were there, they're all upset. And it turns to me like, what do you want to do, Mark? It's up to you. And I knew he wouldn't want to be like that. I wouldn't want to be like that in a hospital. I mean, he had tubes everywhere. Probably had brain damage now, whether from what they did or from the accident, but I don't believe it was from the accident. So I made the decision, let's just go ahead and discontinue life support, and the family agreed. My brother Eric and my brother Jamie were there, and they decided they couldn't handle being in the room when they turned everything off. Neither could my mother, neither could my stepmother. So it turned out to be me and my sister Connie. And so we go in there, and they crank up the drugs I guess he was on, and they turn off the respirator, take that out, and then they leave the room. And I noticed when they did that, I looked at his ear, and because they had a band, like elastic band around to hold the respirator in place, and every time he'd breathe, that elastic band would like a little saw, and it literally had cut a 1/4 inch into his ear. Can you imagine how painful that would be to cut a 1/4 inch into your ear constantly with a little string going back and forth like that? Nobody noticed that. Well, they leave, but they left the heart monitor still on. So you're sitting there watching your father lay there comatose, watching beep, 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 beep. And something else they told us when I said, well, why don't you just try and take him off the respirator? They said, oh, his heart can't handle it. His heart won't handle it. His heart beat for 15 minutes with no oxygen. That's how long it took for him to die. So that's over. Me and my sister are the only ones in the room. Everybody else is, hysterical as you can imagine. They cremated him, had a sermon. I spoke at the sermon. My brother Tim spoke at the sermon. Nobody else could really speak. He wasn't a religious man, my father. He was in a church anyway. And then after that, Marlene, sadly went back to Florida. And his condominium and her condominium both got foreclosed on, because there was some other things going on, which I'm not going to go into here. He was kind of suffering through some financial things the same time I was, ironically, but for different reasons. And so she kind of lost everything, ended up moving, forget where it was, someplace in the east. She was from New York City, and they really loved each other. And my father and my mother really loved each other. My mother was devastated, but she was supportive of Marlene. But Marlene had had enough tragedy in her life. Her only daughter, who she adored, was kidnapped when she was like 18 years old and held for ransom by some guys in New York City. They wrote a book on this, as a matter of fact. There was a novel written on this, based on this event. And they didn't get they got the money, the ransom money. Her father, her real father, paid it. But the men who had kidnapped her lit her on fire and burned her to death. And you can imagine what that does to a mother who's her only child. So Marlene was damaged permanently from that. And then she had to go through this with my father. So she was hard for her to recover. And then I went back on the ship. I went to see my family for a little while, my wife and my daughters. I was divorced at the time. And went back on the ship and tried to pretend like everything was fine. I had to walk back up on stage and, you know, put on a show. So anyway, that's that story. Sorry it's a downer, but I just thought it, you know, one that I wanted to tell. Thanks. Bye.